Okay, I'm going to make sure that that is closed because it looks like we are good. I'm going to close that. I'm going to refresh this. Give me 1 second. Make sure that's in there. Ta-da, we're here. Yay, we've got it. All right. Hello, everybody. And welcome to another episode, I'm calling it an episode, of 20 Seconds of Courage. I'm Tracy Robin, and I'm here today with one of my dear friends. I'm so excited, Dr. Jenev Caddell. And we're going to be talking about healthy communication in relationships, asking for what you need. We'll talk about codependency. We'll talk about worthiness. We'll talk about so much fun stuff. Jenev is a dear friend of mine. We met probably about 6 years ago. I think it was 6 years ago. And we've kept in touch through, we worked in a program for 2 or 3 years together, and we've kept in touch since, and we're dear friends, and we're so excited to have a conversation and let you be a fly on the wall in our conversation today. And before we got started, Jenev and I were talking about how this whole thing got started with 20 Seconds of Courage. And I was sharing with her that, you know, for me, I'm so tired of highlight reels. There's a lot, we're very inundated with highlight reels on social media. And I always feel like, I always want to know the behind the scenes, or I feel like not all of the information is being shared. And like, sometimes it feels like, well, I didn't get all the information, and why aren't you sharing it with me? So, and I was always afraid to ask. So this was sort of a shift for me to start asking. And how this whole thing started was a couple of, I guess back in the summer, I went to a dear friend of mine, Michelle Dickinson. Shout out, Michelle. She's a wonderful woman. She works with, she's an advocate for mental health, and she is also an author of a book called Breaking Into My Life. She tells her story about growing up with a mother who had a mental health issues. So a wonderful book, highly recommend it. And anyway, I was at an event that she was hosting, and I met a gentleman who was an author, and we were talking, and I said to him, you know, I'm a writer, but I don't really write. This is how this whole thing got started, right? So we got to talking, and then it unfolded that actually I do write on a regular basis, pretty much almost every single day. I write in my journal for anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour. Like sometimes I just keep writing. And he says, so basically you're BSing yourself. You are a writer. You have these books that you're telling me you have all these ideas and you want to share your voice, but you're not really committing to it as like in an intention setting way. Like you're not setting the intention to get it done. So then he dared me basically. He's like, how about you write 136 words every day for the next 30 days? And of course, this was really interesting. And I wonder if you all have experienced this. I started to cycle into all the reasons why I couldn't do 136 words. Like I was watching it was like I stood outside of myself and watched myself make excuses. It was remarkable. And then he would ask me again, and I made less excuses. And then I started that by the end, like it was 4 times. He's like, so are you going to do it? So are you going to do it? So are you going to do it? Like, and then I was like, enough, I'm going to just do this, like whatever. So my friend Michelle became my accountability partner. And do you guys know that I filled 3 journals? 3. Between May and August, I filled 3 full journals. And I'm talking like composition notebooks like this. This is 100 sheets and it's double-sided. So that's like way more than 136 plus words a day. So, it was really remarkable. And through that process, I got clarity on what I wanted to share and how I wanted to serve next. And so this grew out of that idea of how are the ways I can be of service? How are the ways that I can share my voice? Because that also helps me, that heals me and fulfills me. And in the process, just give, right? Because I think ultimately, I mean, you and I have had this conversation, Jenev, like, I think ultimately I want to give more and live more. You know, everything that we desire, and we're going to talk about desires today, really, I think ultimately comes down to giving more, living more, and loving more, and being loved more. So with that, I would love to dive in and get this conversation started. I'm going to have Jenev introduce herself. She's an amazing woman. You all are going to love her. She's going to tell us who she is, what she does, and we'll dive in.
Can I just ask you a question first?
Of course.
136 words? How come? Do you know why? Because that seems like a specific number.
Yes. Oh, that's a great question. So this guy has written 5 books.
Okay.
And he calculated, I guess, that it was like approximately 50,000 words.
Okay.
So he takes out his calculator and he was like, da 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 da. And I don't know what math he did, but it came out to 136 plus.
Got it. Okay.
That's a great question. Thank you. Yeah.
It seemed like a random number.
So. It was random. And he's like, you could do this too. Like, if I could do it, you could do it. And this guy is awesome. He's actually, one of his books, totally cool dude. I think his name is Mike Feh. Well, he's got do you know who he is?
No, I don't.
But he actually has a book being optioned for Netflix, I think. So it's really cool. Yeah, he tells a story about his Irish upbringing. Like, he's a cool dude. So shout out to Mike and Michelle. I will tag you guys in this post. Share it. Love it. Mwah. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle and Mike, for helping me open up this chakra of my throat.
Yes.
Tell us about you, Jenev.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a psychologist. I work with a lot of couples. I've got a private practice. I'm in New Hampshire, Southern New Hampshire, and I do some coaching as well. And yeah, that's, my whole thing getting into psychology, I'll just share real briefly, is that I was interested in potential and, helping people live their ultimate lives and that sort of thing. And, I got sort of in the psychology world of illness and pathology and, that sort of thing. And the last thing I ever wanted to do was work with relationships or couples, because I thought, oh, this would be too easy, right? Like just teaching people how to communicate. I thought, oh, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Let me get in the depths of the psyche and whatnot. And that was, I thought, much more of an individual thing, which was, fine in terms of how the models of psychotherapy and, all that was at the time back in the dinosaur years. No. But anyway, what I
did
in
the 1900s.
That's right. Well, actually early 2000s, I will say that. But I sort of accidentally started doing couples therapy. I thought it was going to be a breeze. I had done all kinds of work with, not to go on and on about it, but, people in really difficult situations, marginalized, just underprivileged, a lot of stuff with psychosis and suicidality, whatever. I thought, oh, talking to couples is going to be a piece of cake. But I was literally for the first time in my career, I was drowning. I was so bad at it. I was way over my head. I wanted to run out of the room. There was just way too much going on. People were just emotionally so charged up. It was something I hadn't experienced so much in individual therapy. And so I knew I had to get better training. And that's when I sort of learned that a whole new way of looking at people is that we're really wired for connection, and that emotionally and physiologically, when our relationships aren't going well, we go berserk, our nervous systems go crazy, all these kinds of survival systems set off, and that kind of creative thinking and processing, all that stuff, it just goes to pieces. So anyway, I could go on and on about this, but what I learned and what I didn't realize, because I was always such a, individualist, just take care of yourself kind of person, was that we're actually wired for connection, and we can't actually reach that potential or be our best unless those sort of needs are all set and we're thriving in that department. And there's all kinds of, stacks and stacks of research and papers and all that proves that. But this is sort of a paradigm shift culturally here in the West, right? Where we think, pull yourselves up by the bootstraps and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think it's one that we need desperately, because our world is somewhat falling apart, I think, likely because of division and because we don't see ourselves as a unified whole, and because of the way, how we treat our planet. I could go on, but anyway, so that's how I learned about couples therapy, and emotionally focused therapy is the kind of work I do with couples, which has been demonstrated to work really well. And it's all about emotions. And so that's the long and short of it. That's me rambling about myself, but it's really about this sort of model of the world that I think we've gotten a little bit backwards. At least I grew up learning it backwards. So
I absolutely love how you said we are wired for connection, and that division of it is what's causing the issue. And that's sort of, I think, what I discovered accidentally. I didn't have that language, and it's so beautiful and articulate how you spoke just now. Just what you said is just so real, and I feel spot on. I think my finding yoga was
Mm,
my way of reconnecting with my own emotions,
yeah.
reconnecting with my own self, with my own spirit. And whoever's watching here, like, it doesn't have to be God in that blank sentence, right? You can connect, you can have your higher power, your spirit be whatever you want it to be. I'm not defining it. I'm not your higher power. You know what I mean? Like, but this concept of,
Please, I'm not your higher power. Sorry.
I'm not your higher power. Don't give me that kind of, like, I don't want that responsibility.
Wait,
You
we're
know,
talking about codependency too?
exactly. And I just find, like, when I got on the yoga mat, the emotional release of reconnection to myself, to my spirit, to my soul, to what who I was and what I really wanted in life was so profound and that was back in the 1900s, that I was like, I need to share this with absolutely everybody I possibly can who will give me the ear. And that was what began my journey into becoming a yoga teacher and a healthy living educator.
Yeah.
Like, and then eventually into a holistic life coach, because all of those pieces, I think it's so similar in that assist that the concept that what we feel is such a part of, it's like an indicator of those, are we connected, are we not?
Totally.
Like, so cool. I love that. We are so wired for connection. I love that. Yes. Love
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
What have you found? You said something else that was really, what have you found happen? So, like, let's say somebody isn't they're like disconnected from their self, they're disconnected from their own wants and needs, and now they're in a relationship with someone else. What does that look like? I know that's a really broad question, but let's say I can get a little more specific. Like, what happens? You're in a marriage. I'll use myself as an example. I have and Jenev and I have talked about, and all of you know Jason by now because we do videos together. Jason and I have a really strong relationship, and full disclosure, we work at it because and I'm sure you can attest to this as a relationship coach and a therapist, like, you have to work at it. Like, it doesn't just come easy. And so what happens when you're in a relationship with someone, things seem like they're going great, and then someone shifts, finds out more about themselves, maybe they're doing some inner work, and then all of a sudden they realize that they're not fully satisfied.
Mhm.
Like, they instantly, maybe they think, oh, it must be my relationship, but when they go inside and they start to think, you know what, I want something different, I want something else. How do you navigate that? Like, how does one navigate a conversation with your spouse without, like, destroying the relationship?
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, how, I know some of my methods, but I really want to hear yours.
Well, so the most important thing, right? I mean, I could give you like tips and things from the books, like, oh, how you start a conversation is how you're going to finish it up, like soft startup, like all these sort of superficial kind of like
No, we want the real juice.
Tips and strategies, which no, but they're valid. I mean, and they help. So, make sure, if you want to have a difficult conversation, make space for, I mean, I could tell you all that stuff.
Yes.
But what ultimately is, when you're saying, I mean, are you saying you're trying to break up with somebody? Or are you trying to say you want to ask for something else? Or, I mean, I guess, because I'm not really sure when you're not satisfied, like, how do you bring up? Okay, I'll just
let's say you're not happy in your chosen profession, or what you've been doing and how you've all been, like, moving toward, like, how you and your spouse have been moving towards a goal, and you're starting to feel like, I want the similar goal, but I want to get there differently.
Yeah, so I think the answer is different in some ways for every couple, depending on the state of the relationship, right? But I will say that a really helpful way of thinking about the foundation of a super solid relationship, right? And I didn't make this up. This is from Sue Johnson, who's a pioneer of this work, who's shifted she's done, her work is phenomenal. But the foundation of any solid relationship that you want to think about when you're having this conversation is an affirmative answer to the question, are you there for me, right? Do I matter to you? Am I important to you? Couples will say that they're fighting about money or kids or sex or politics or whatever, and it's never about any of that stuff. It's always about, do I feel like I matter to my partner? Do I feel important to them? Do I feel valued by them?
Mm.
So the question isn't about, that's why couples who get into the worst arguments about the most trivial of things, like the dishes or this or that, it's never about that. It's about, are you there for me? And if you can't answer that question yes, then you're going to start spiraling and going through all this sort of like life or death feelings that literally feel like life or death, because that's how your biology is processing it. So your brain is saying, okay, I'm cut up. Anyway, go on. So the point is, you want to answer that affirmatively. And how do you do that? Well, the brilliant Sue Johnson has made an acronym, ARE, are you there for me? And each of them stands for something that you want to sort of convey in your conversation, which is accessibility. You want to be accessible to your partner. And so that means you want to let them really in, right? You don't want to just, there are different layers of emotions that we show, right? So again, Tracy, to your yoga practice, right? When you can really connect with yourself and you can really know how you feel, and you're not operating from this sort of distanced, sort of secondary place, you can really be more raw and open and vulnerable and really show who you are and how you feel in a way that's not threatening. That's sort of being accessible in a way, and that your partner can reach you. R is being responsive. And this is something, and now this is like maybe not so relevant in this conversation, but in a regular way, you want to be responsive to your partner. You don't want to be like, oh, what'd you just say? Right? You want to actually respond to them and look at them, right?
Yeah, like what?
Yeah, but this is my phone, by the way, right?
Yes,
like
I know.
where people are, right? But you want to be responsive. You want to be able to let each other in, and you want to be emotionally engaged, right? You actually want to care and really care, right? So I think though, to what you're asking, I think the best way of bringing it up, right, is if you have that solid connection and that foundation, you want to talk about something that's important to you. You want to say, hey, this is really important to me. And I want to, I don't know what the point is if you want to get their feedback, or you want to just share, or you want to let them know. The more vulnerable you and raw and honest you can be, the more disarming you're going to be, right? Because we are like, people will say, with kids and stuff, or with pets and stuff, you can show, couples will say, he shows more love to the dog than he does to me, right? Well, and it's because the dog, right? But it's because the dog is like man's best friend. The dog isn't threatening. The dog is always going to love him, right? But as your partner, or as his partner, his partner might be like, we threaten each other, right? Because we are reliant on each other. We rely on each other. We need each other. And so something that maybe, I know that that's sort of like a grave example. I'm hoping that, and asking this question, most of the people who might be listening have these solid relationships where it's like, yeah, I can bring this up with my partner and they'll listen and they'll be responsive. But if you don't have that ARE foundation, anything can start a fire, right?
Yeah.
So to succinctly answer your question, I would say, just present it in a raw, vulnerable, honest way that shows your partner that they really matter to you.
Right.
And this is why you're sharing this with them.
And tell us the acronym again. It's
ARE. Are you there for me? A is accessibility. R is responsiveness. And E is emotional engagement. Yeah. And this is something that you need to have throughout.
Are you there for me? That's awesome. I love that. I love that. Love that. Love that. So does that go into, you and I talked about like asking for what you need, like, I think sometimes it gets people, and you probably can speak to this more because this is what you work with a lot with your clients, right? So how does somebody like come to you and say, I'm not happy, like, so somebody says, I'm not happy, but a lot of times I don't think, especially for women, I think that we have been conditioned to not have needs and desires, especially moms. I'm not a mom, I'm an aunt. But I see my moms like in my life, my own mother, my sister. I have friends and colleagues and stuff, like there's an often like putting this other person first,
Sure.
Putting your children first, putting your husband or your partner first. And like, what do you say to somebody when they're looking to figure out what it is they actually desire? Like, how do you get even clear on that? Because I've facilitated programs too. And again, like this is work. I have my way of doing it, but I'm in a conversation with you, and you have such a specialty and so much wisdom and knowledge. And I really want to be able to share that with all the people watching and listening. So, you know, when a woman has like now, like, let's say their kids are older and they don't need them as much, and then they suddenly come to these programs of self-discovery, and they're like, I don't know what, I don't need anything. I don't need anything. I don't want anything. I'm fine so long as my children are happy. Like these are things that people say, like I have a happy home. And then they come to us as coaches and they're like, I'm miserable. Like, but that's not what you're saying outside of here, you know? So how do you navigate helping evoke someone's true desires and their understanding that it's okay for them to have them? I mean, that's a huge codependent trait, right?
Yeah. Well,
have you had this experience for yourself?
Oh, you mean myself with my own desires?
Yeah.
No, I've been always a selfish person. I mean, I've certainly been. I mean, have I sacrificed for my kids? Have I maybe not done things that I'd like to do as much as I'd like because of them? Absolutely, right? And have I consciously like I don't work as hard as I would like to sometimes, but I also have to prioritize my family, and and I'm like, yeah, they're little now, and I love, and I don't even, I mean, they have like, school and daycare or preschool, all that stuff. So it's like I don't spend a ton of time with them, but I certainly could spend less time with them and do things that I would also enjoy. But I'm also like, I have to give up some things, but I also like, there are things that I do for me that are just for me. And sometimes I feel a little bit guilty about it, but then I'm like, no, you got to do that, because otherwise you're terrible. You're not fun to be around, right? You're miserable. Nobody wants me to be miserable, right?
I love what you said, like how, and I want to just acknowledge, and those of you watching, like, you are so in your power when you said, like, no, I've always been selfish. And there was no judgment. It was just a statement. And I want to really be clear. Selfishness is not a bad thing. I know for me in my life, being called selfish was like a reprimand. It was like, you're being selfish. And it trains us into putting ourselves last. It trains us out of self-care. And I think that, Abraham Hicks talks a lot about it, that we can only look at life from our selfish perspective, because it's coming from our self. Like but to deny that we have a self is like, it's death. Like,
yeah. Well, and this is a problem for so many people, because I mean, I could say a lot about this, because first of all, it's great to be selfish because of that wired for connection piece, right? I believe that unless we're sociopaths or have some kind of brain injury, which sociopaths do, right? We want to help. We want to take care of each other. Like, I'm selfishly like choosing not to, be creative or whatever, so that I can be with my kids and take care. And again, I'm certainly not a model mother or parent or a business owner or anything, like, but I've got my own way that works. You know what I mean? So, but by being selfish, like, we are innately empathic and we care about each other, and that selfishness, like, that's just part of who we are. Like, of course I care about, like, my family. Like, of course I want it. Like, it's selfish of me to like get them a gift or whatever. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm being clear, but it's okay. It's great to be selfish. And in relationships, that will bite you in the rear end if you're not, because it's not good for your partner, because they want somebody who's like selfish and who, not that, and again, I don't want to confuse that with being like super self-centered all the time, or just obsessed with yourself or whatever. But if you're not, like, you're the only person who knows what it is that you need and want. And I mean, we could make a chart and say, this is what you need. I mean, you need to have water and food and love and whatever, but when people negate themselves and think that, oh, I'm just going to do what they want because I want them to be happy, and put their own desires on the back seat, it's actually doing a disservice to your partner and to your relationship, not only because you're going to get resentful eventually and maybe sick, but because your partner doesn't get a partner that way.
So true. Yeah. I mean, I know from my own experience that when I'm not taking care of myself, our relationship suffers.
Sure.
When I'm not being selfish, my relationship suffers. And that could be anything from having time in the morning to do my journaling and meditation, doing my working out, going for a walk, spending time with my girlfriends, watching a show that I want to watch that he may not want to watch. Like, I know that sounds silly, but like that could be it. Like self-care, taking time to make food. And of course I make food for both of us, but sometimes I don't have time for that. And I just have to make my meal,
Yeah.
but then when we are together, I feel taken care of. And I think this now leads into that whole concept of codependency, is like expecting someone else to fulfill you and meet your needs all the time.
Hmm.
That backfires big time. I mean, I think I shared with you, like last summer, I spent a lot of time working on my fourth step. And those of you who don't know recovery, this is all about character defects and resentments and stuff like that. And boy, was that an eye opener of, even after being in recovery for so many years. And I mean, I'm on my, I think this is 9 years in now, almost 10 years in, like this concept, this idea of like how much I was still feeling like a victim, how much I was still feeling like, but I want that person to intuit what I'm thinking. Just, you should know it. I shouldn't have to ask for what I need.
Oh wow. Yeah.
That's such a huge issue. Like, why doesn't this person just understand? And and then it took me, it took time. I was working with a sponsor, and like really it took months. I took the whole summer to work on this because very emotional, intense, it's intensity, because you're bringing up all this stuff, like these ways you thought were the ways to think and be and behave and what was real. And it busts it wide open and has like, wait a second. The only person who has power over me is me and my choices. Truly, we have no control over anyone else. And when I tell people that, they're like, that's not true. That can't possibly be true. Like, some people will like react really aggressively when you say like, the only person you're responsible for and the only person you actually have power over is yourself. That's how you change, right? So that's always such an interesting thing, is like when it taught me that I have to take care of myself.
Hmm.
Like I can't look to Jason and be like, these are the things I want, make them happen. Like, be my knight in shining armor is like great if you're 3 or 4 or 5 years old. And even that is the worst time to be teaching girls and boys that concept, like that we have to rely on someone else. Because I think those, and I know from the work that I do energetically, all of our core belief systems are put into place by the time we're like 7 to 12 years old. They're all in there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Can I jump in on this subject a little bit about the codependency thing?
Yes, please tell us.
So since learning about this stuff and the fact that we're wired for connection and all the rest, I have a problem with the word codependency in itself, because it does pathologize this inherent need that we do have for each other. Right. I mean, so I agree with what you're saying, in that we're 100% responsible for ourselves, and owning that responsibility is the most powerful thing that we can do. Right. And recognizing like you can't control other people and you're not responsible for them and all the rest. Right. Unless, of course, they're your kids. Right. That sort of thing. But at the same time, we are responsible for each other. And I think this is where there's a dangerous split in the road that some people, I think, go a little too far with, right? Mm-hmm. So, what I'm saying is that they're really, codependency is another way of calling like ineffective dependency, if that makes sense.
Yes. I love that clarity. Yeah.
And it's not mine. Like, I didn't make this up, because so Sue Johnson, again, she says there's no such, I just think codependency is a word that we throw around and we make it like it's some terrible thing. And while it doesn't work to just think that, oh, this person should take care of me, and or to take, responsibility for everyone else, like be their higher power or whatever, right? Obviously that's not great. It's not good for anybody, right? So I'm on board with that. But the way the word gets thrown around, And I think the lack of responsibility that we take sometimes can be quite dangerous and a problem. But so Sue Johnson says there's no such thing as codependency. There's only effective or ineffective dependency, because we do have needs for each other. We do have emotional needs that we can't meet in a vacuum by ourselves.
Correct.
That's why I have such a problem with the self-love thing. I am all about self-love. Love yourself, but love was something that's like that connects us. It's glue. It unites us. It's something that we feel for one another. And I get it. Like if you don't love yourself and if you think you're a terrible person, it's a lot harder to let in love from someone else. And that's why, you'll see people always with, the same relationship patterns with like unavailable partners or whatever it is. But it's a lot easier to take in love from someone else than it is to just create it out of the blue. And so I don't care if that person's a healer of some kind or a coach or a therapist, if you have to hire someone to do it, for whatever it is, right? I think that we get into really tricky territory with the whole, codependency thing, because people become codependent because those needs were not fulfilled originally. And it doesn't have to always be that way. So I guess I had to sort of like jump on the codependency thing there, because it just gets sort of talked about, and especially in the coaching world, I think there's a lot more responsibility that needs to be taken by a lot of coaches out there in terms of how they show up for their clients. And I know we both sort of lived through this bubble of coaching where everybody and their mother was a coach, right? And oh, I'm not responsible. And I get it. A client of mine actually said, who's also a mental health professional, said, and this was really, I loved this. He said that one of his supervisors said to him, "You're not responsible for the results, but you are responsible for the process," right? So, I get it. You can't take responsibility for your client's results or anything like that. But the lack of responsibility that I've seen having been taken in the past, in the name of not being codependent, has sort of, it's just been interesting to me. So I think we're in this dangerous ground a little bit with the code. I don't know if I'm being clear, if
You're totally being clear. I love everything you're saying. Keep going.
That's it. I think that we need to recognize that, again, we are wired for connect. I'm reading this book by Lynn McTaggart. Have you heard of her?
Mm-mm.
She's great. I read her book. I read a book by hers years and years ago called The Field. She read this incredible book called The Power of Eight about intention, and how, she's she was a journalist, I think. So she comes with a degree of skepticism. She looks at the science. The book is almost 10 years old, and it's called The Bond, about how the more we look into this and into, quantum science, whatever, there's no thing, there's really no, it's just the space in between. It's just the connection. It's just relationship. That's all anything is. And so we walk around in these silos thinking, I don't want to be codependent and that sort of thing, but we are interdependent. So there's that, and it gets a little bit confusing, because it's like, well, where do I end and where do you begin? And it really doesn't end right here at our skin.
Yeah.
So, and I know it gets confusing, and that doesn't mean, that's not an excuse to deny your needs or put yourself on the back seat or not be selfish. But when, and we are only aware ourselves of, what we want and what we need and what's whatever. But it's just it can get into sticky territory. So anyway,
No, I think that's such a great distinction. And I will tell you that my experience as a codependent, as a recovering codependent, is that there is a balance, there's a balance between connection and isolation.
Yes.
And for me, part of my addiction, if you will, is that I isolate. Because I have always found, and I was the kid that was conditioned, if you want something done right, you can do it yourself. Don't rely on other people. Other people can't be trusted. We can go in. That's a whole other, that's a kind of another conversation for us to have, which I'm happy to have, because I think I know I'm not the only one that has that. This the only safe place is your nuclear family. That's this is it. And then that just implodes on you when you find that you're in like a bubble of codependency and addiction. Like that's like the blind leading the blind, So I've found in my journey in healing from codependency, in recovering, in finding help, like, because the goal is to have healthy relationships.
Yes.
And I think that people look at the word codependency, if we're looking at it just as a semantic, like what is it? Like when I reacted when my teacher years ago, it was probably 14 years ago, said to me, "Have you gone to CODA? You probably should." I'm like, "What is CODA?" And she's like, "Oh, that's codependency. It's a group for codependents." And I'm like, "I'm not codependent. I'm totally independent." I had no concept of what the actual word meant. So I love how you said effective and ineffective dependency, because that connectivity is how we survive and thrive. I think Tony Robbins even talks about it. I think it's one of the 5 or 6 basic human needs is love and connection. It's a basic human need. It's love, connection, significance, right? Contribution.
Yeah.
Like all of these things are about connection with others and service to others. And where the ineffective dependency, to use your languaging, comes is when we give up our own selfishness in that, right?
Yep.
In yoga, we talk about it, the big self and the little self. And the little self is the one that gets caught up in the Maya, which is the Sanskrit word for illusion of the day-to-day life. Like, oh, this is really important. My mail's piling up. It's super important. And my groceries have to get in my car. And that's not really what's important. What's important is the bigger self or the higher self, which is, your divinity within your humanity. And in that is really about connection with others. I mean, that's what yoga is about, is coming together, not that isolation and that separateness. So the danger comes because if people are just looking at the word codependency and they're looking at selfishness and they're looking at the surface of it,
Totally.
which I think is why you and I love so much what we do, is because we get to take individuals and dive deeper into what that really means and really connect to how that is working in their lives physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, spiritually, those pieces that are truly like all of those aspects of us that are not healed are actually running the ship. And then when our vehicle crashes and we're like, why is my life falling apart or so hard, or my relationships falling apart, or this is not working, it's because we haven't done that inner exploration of like reconnecting to our higher selfishness. That makes sense at all?
Makes so much sense. Absolutely.
So I just love that distinction. Do you know, so there's this great, let me just check where we're doing okay. There is this great, have you heard of the Clifton Strengths Assessment? Have I told you about this?
Yeah.
Okay, so this, for those of you that are watching and listening, the Clifton Strengths Assessment it's kind of like a personality profile. But it's more about your strengths profile. So it's how are you going to work in the world? What's the best way for you to be most effective in your day-to-day? And it's really, the goal is really about team building. Like, at least when I took it, it's like, how can you effectively build teams in your life and your business? Mostly in business is what people do this for, I guess. But it also is about when you stay in your top 5 strengths on a day-to-day basis, and that's where you spend most of your time, that's where you're going to be most happy and most fulfilled and most successful. And then to fill in the blanks with other people who have strengths in other areas so that you're a well-oiled machine. Does that make sense? So I took the test. Do you know what my top 5 are?
You told me, but I forgot what they are.
My number 1
connection, empathy.
My number 1 is connection. Good memory. It's connection, positivity, and empathy are my top 3. And so all of this knowledge between the recovery and the conversation with Michelle and Mike that I shared about before, and the strengths assessment, and just the work that I've done with my own coaches and my own self-discovery and through my yoga practice, and even as being a teacher and a coach, like, I think people don't, well, let me finish this thought. All of that to say, like, brought me to this 20 seconds of courage. It's like, wow, actually, this is, even though Jenev and I are virtual and you all are watching and listening virtually, I hope that you feel a connection. And if you're not, then reach out to us, because I am so about service and through connection. And I got to tell you, Jenev, like working as a connective human, like it's apparently I'm in the right profession too.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
but thank God, but it's like so rewarding and fulfilling. Like when you and I connected and I spoke with Claire and I had a few other conversations with my friend, Jennifer, Jen W.
Yeah.
I don't want to like, it's Wojciechowicz. I think
Yeah, I
it's,
don't have to realize it. She's
I
lovely.
always, Jen W. I love you. Mwah, mwah, mwah. I was on an interview with her and she's going to be on here with us too soon.
Nice.
So, but it feeds my soul. It feeds my soul to just show up and be here honestly and positively and empathetically and honestly and just connect with another human being. If I was in New Hampshire, I'd be doing this with you over coffee at your dining room table. You know what I mean? Like, so, or vice versa if you were in Jersey. But then I wanted to say something else. I think it's really important for people as you're watching these, and I'm sharing, you guys know me a little bit, and I'm bringing on wonderful human beings like Jenev, and they are also professionals in their fields. I'm not really like, if you're very aware, I'm not sitting here promoting anybody, because this is not really about promotion. This is about connection and conversation. However, this is what I want to say about myself, and Jenev, I would love for you to share about you too as well. Like, none of it happens in a vacuum. Like all of the progress I've made in my life, some of it has been within my own self-discovery work, but I don't want people to think self-discovery work means I'm hiding under a blanket, I'm locking myself in a room of isolation, and I'm doing it all alone on books.
Yeah.
Because there are just some things. I would not be where I am today. I would not have been so far along, and I'm not by any means saying I'm a self-professed expert, but in my journey of healing and wholeness, I would not be where I was if I didn't have the support of other human beings.
Totally.
Right? Like,
totally.
And that doesn't necessarily mean I hired a coach or just a therapist or this. I did a combination of things.
All of it.
Yeah. Right? Like, I have a massage therapist, I have an acupuncturist, I have a chiropractor. People don't realize like that's human connection. Those people are serving us. Like, it could be a coach, it could be a therapist, it could be a group that you create, a support group or a support group you go to. But all of the healing, and I'm a reader, I'm an English major, and as you are too, I know you're an English, a bibliophile.
Yeah, I'm not an English major by any stretch.
No, but I know you're not an English major, but you're a book lover, right?
Sure. Nonfiction. I don't really like fiction, but anyway.
No, but I mean, you like self-discovery books, right?
Sure.
Maybe
whatever. I'm interested. I'm curious.
But the point I'm trying to make is that I've read a lot of books, and I read a lot of books, and I teach a lot of books, and I recommend a lot of books, but it's not all in there.
That's right.
It's not all in there because you can't ask the book questions. And the book can't hear you speaking.
The book doesn't see you, right?
But it doesn't see you. And that's one of the biggest needs I know for myself. Dude, I got to share this with you guys. Okay, you just reminded me. So I have a yoga DVD out there. Some of you know that or not. It's an instructional DVD. I made it back in like 2009, I think, or 2008. Before I did that, and there's a big thank you to the group of people that helped me. And it was a group of people. Let me just tell you, it was not. I was stuck. The thing was done. It was in the can. It was edited. It was not out in the world. Actually, it wasn't edited. It was shot, but not edited. And I was terrified. And I did this work. I took a program, a self-discovery program, to work through some of the blocks that were keeping me from putting my voice out there, which is a lot of you guys, what I'm doing now is another version of that, like putting myself out there. Done is better than perfect, right? Well, do you know that the number one thing that was actually my kryptonite to getting all of this out in the world was being seen? I mean, we did this kinesthetic exercise, I think it's called, where you had to write down the 5 top things that were making you scared of completing your goal. And you had like 5 people you were working with, and they built like this like barricade with their arms to get to the signpost. Like, so you have this list at the end of the row and everybody's blocking you and you got to push through. I got through until, I don't remember the other ones, but then it said, I'll be seen. I couldn't push their hands open. Like, wow. When you get muscle tested?
Yep.
Similar to that. I like collapsed on the floor. I was incapacitated. I could not believe how feared I was of being seen. And that's actually such a huge healer. What you said, like you have to be seen and heard.
And felt. Yeah.
And felt. Oh, yeah. I got goosebumps. Can you see it? All my hairs are standing. What else can we cover? What else do we want to talk about? Is there something else that we haven't covered that you want to add, or something about yourself that you want to share? Can you share some of your experience with any of this?
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
own personal discovery, self-discovery journey? Like,
yeah, it's not done in isolation. It can't be. Like I have like learning this like emotionally focused therapy stuff was not just about like reading a book and like figuring out how to work with couples. It was about actually putting yourself into this, doing intense role plays. And, you know, the interesting thing is that, you know, when we think about people, I always used to think, you know, oh my gosh, like it's so overwhelming. Everybody's so unique and so different. And all of that is true, right? But when I was, one of the most powerful things I've done as a just my own self growth or whatever has been really doing this training, which was over a period of several years, because it really is about getting in touch with your emotions, right? God forbid, right? So we would, you know, part of the training is to really do these role. I mean, and it's in a safe way. I mean, obviously you're with like groups and stuff, but part of it is just doing these role plays. And what I learned was, what I witnessed or experienced was how actually, even though we have different styles of dealing with our emotions, right? How much more similar we all are. It sounds so cheesy. How much more similar that we all are than different. But really, it's true. How emotionally at the core, it's biology. And so if I hadn't, and nobody, you know, I'll like people in training doing therapy or whatever, like nobody wants to do role plays. It's the worst, right? And this isn't role play, like here's the script, talk it out. No, this is about really like, it's like you're an actor too, right? Right? It's like the Stanislavski. Is it Stanislavski? Like the one
method?
when you, yeah, the method where you actually experience, you actually put yourself into the role and you actually physically experience it. It's empathy. It's like we're wired for it. It's not empathy. It's beyond empathy, but it's also like, anyway, so having to do that, right, got me in touch with places that were foreign, or not necessarily foreign, but raw, and like doing it, like doing it with others is like, what is that, right? Like that's what I have to facilitate, right? But you can't, that's why I think there's so much danger with a lot of this self-help stuff, because I am into all this stuff and reading it and all that, but like it is a process, like again, like the whole self-love thing, you can't do it in a vacuum, right? You can't, there is something about the sharing of it and being seen in a way that, you know, or even like showing yourself in a way and allowing yourself to be seen in a way that you can't do by yourself. You can't be seen by yourself. I mean, you can witness yourself and that sort of thing. So I just love that you said that, because there is a danger in the whole, like, again, self-help, self-love, selfie,
selfie.
Right?
Yes. Oh my God. I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
It's all about me, right? And that's
problematic.
Yeah, because I mean, and again, here at the same time, we're both saying, you know, be selfish, and it's true. But again, being selfish means you're wired to want to be with other people and you want to like share yourself with others. And anyway, so.
Yeah, I wonder if there's new language we can create. You know, we're always creating new words in this English language. Like, is there a new term that we can use?
Yes, Dan Siegel is a brilliant psychiatrist who's sort of started this new field of, I mean, it's not that new anymore, but it's called interpersonal neurobiology. And he argues that we do not stop at our skin. He's like, he talks about how he'll meet with mental health professionals and he'll say, so you guys are all mental health professionals. What is the mind? And nobody has an answer, right? Nobody knows. And so he talks about how part of the mind is actually, it's in like, part of it is relational. And so he has invented a new word, and it is MWE.
MWE. Is it an acronym?
No, it's mui. It's not I, it's not you, it's not we, it's mui.
Oh, mui, M-U-I. That's
No,
awesome.
M-W-E.
Huh?
M-W-E.
Mui.
Like not me, not we, but mui.
That's great.
Anyway, so.
So now we have to be muish, right? It's muish.
Well,
So-
isn't it some culture like, is it Japanese? I mean, this is like, I may be making a fool of myself here, but I've heard before, like Japanese, in the Japanese language, there's no word for I.
Yeah, I think you're correct. Something like, yeah, there is one language out there. I don't remember which one, but it's not, there's no I.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a meme or whatever, like, you know.
And
but
you know,
whatever.
I have to say this, like, part of what yoga teaches is that we're all connected, right? The breath connects us all. There's actually a song out there that's the breath connects us all. And like, and I don't think it's cheesy to say that we are, you know, 99% of us is the same. We are
That's right.
1% articulated in how we are unique. 1%, I think.
Less than that. 99% of us is the same with chimpanzees, right?
Yeah. And in yoga, you know, one of the things I always say is like, you know, I see myself in you. That's what the word namaste, there's many different translations and many different ways to talk about it. It's like when you're in your divine human space and I'm in my divine human space and we are lit up like that, we're the same. That lives in us all the time. Like my favorite translation is I see myself in you, you know, and this concept that you're just me sitting over there in New Hampshire disguised as Jenev.
With my glasses,
right? With your
glasses,
beautiful glasses and your ponytail, right? But we're the same. Like, and I think that when we can remember that, we will heal ourselves and the world.
Yeah, totally.
And that sounds hokey and it sounds hippy dippy, but it is the truth. It's the essence, and it is so what we need right now.
Totally.
More than ever. And I think this whole I, me, we need to shift to community work. We need to shift to recognize that we're not doing it in a vacuum. And I think that is how we will heal ourselves and the planet and the politics and all of it.
Yeah.
Because we think that it's all just about me and it's mine. And when we work together, we can accomplish so much more. So much more.
Totally.
So powerful. What an awesome conversation.
Thank you. This was so much fun.
So much fun. I'm sure there's more that we can talk about, but we can always do a part 2.
Yeah, I'd love to.
I would love to do a part 2 with you.
Anytime. I love talking to you.
We can talk forever, darling.
Talk for hours.
Talk for hours. We have actually in the past, but let me just check here. What else did we want to discuss? Was there anything else we left out?
I'm sure a whole lot, but that's okay.
Sure, but I think this is a good place to stop for today.
Awesome.
You guys are awesome for being here. Jenev, I cannot thank you enough. I love you dearly.
Thank you. I love you. And thank you guys all for watching.
Yes, thank you. Please post any of your comments below, anything you want to see us talk about more, any questions you have for me or Jenev, tag us in the thread below. I'm going to post this everywhere. Jenev, feel free to share it with whoever you want. And those of you watching, if you want to share this with people, tag them or share it with them. I do make it public because I think this is important. These are important conversations to have with each other. And that's all I've got for today, I think. Stay tuned. There's more coming. There's plenty of, you've had time to catch up. There's few others before this. I'm probably going to collect them all into a YouTube account at some point. But for now, you can see them on my page, on my personal page, and also on the Yoga Lifestyle with Tracy page and other places. If you're not sure, just ask me. On Monday, I'll be talking to Nick Kilpack, my friend in Hawaii, who is an awesome businessman and father and just all around fun person to talk to. And we're going to be talking about business and the difference between approaching businesses from male and female perspective. So that'll be fun. Jenev, big virtual hug, girl. I love you.
Love you too.
Thank you guys. Talk to you later. Bye.